need to move down. We're going to hear from U.S. Attorney Lutzko, ATF Director Dettelbach, U.S. Marshal Pete Elliott, and City of Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb. So there was a slight change to the programming this morning due to a previously scheduling conflict with the Cuyahoga County prosecutor. So that'll be a 2-minute warning, and we'll get started in just a second.
Right. Till door closes. We're trying not to stand in front of the flag. Oh yeah. Like super quiet.
Today, I'm here to announce the results of a 3-month enforcement partners. Partners who stand here today with us together to announce these results. In particular, I want to thank and recognize ATF Director Stephen Dettelbach, whose agents led this initiative, U.S. Marshal Pete Elliott, whose deputies were instrumental in the arrest stemming from this initiative, and Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb, who will address some of Cleveland's additional violence prevention efforts. Cleveland and its neighboring suburbs, like many communities throughout this state and throughout this country, have been hit hard by violent crime. All too often, the illegal sale of firearms and the use and possession of such firearms, frequently in connection with illegally selling drugs, are the source of that violence. Today's announcement showcases the results of law enforcement's focused efforts using data collected from past violent criminal conduct to identify locations where violent crime is rampant and to hold responsible those persons who, individually and while conspiring with others, illegally peddle firearms on Cleveland streets for others to use in committing crimes. To date, we have charged and arrested 59 individuals. They were engaged in illegally trafficking firearms, illegally selling drugs, using firearms to commit other drug crimes, and illegally possessing dangerous firearms, to include several machine guns. Earlier today, indictments and complaints were unsealed in federal court. They detail a lengthy investigation focused on reducing firearms-related crimes in several different areas of Cleveland. This violent crime initiative was very carefully planned. As you will hear more from my colleague, ATF Director Dettelbach, law enforcement studied crime trends throughout the city and carefully allocated resources based on data and areas with gun crime violence to identify and disrupt illegal firearms trafficking. Of the more than 240 firearms that law enforcement seized as part of this initiative, the vast majority of those, 203 firearms, were obtained by law enforcement purchasing these firearms from illegal sellers. Director Dettelbach will discuss in more detail NIBIN, which is the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network, which is a law enforcement tool that law enforcement uses relating to firearms, shell casings, and other ballistic informations to provide timely connections among crimes. That was an integral piece of this initiative. But the important takeaway here is this. NIBIN data shows that a significant number of the firearms that law enforcement purchased from illegal sellers in this investigation are connected to violent criminal activity, including homicides and felonious assaults that took place in Cleveland and surrounding northeast suburbs in 2022 and 2023. The purchased firearms also include 17 ghost guns, which are unserialized and untraceable firearms that are typically assembled at home. They also included 28 machine gun conversion devices, sometimes called a switch or switches. Those are devices that enable firearms to fire in fully automatic mode. You can find many more details about the operation and the facts in the complaints and indictments that are filed in federal court. My office is prosecuting the majority of these cases here in United States District Court, and those federal charges range from conspiracies and substantive charges involving the engaging in businesses or the business of dealing firearms without a federal firearms license, to engaging in the business of importing, manufacturing, or dealing in firearms without federal firearms licenses, and otherwise illegally trafficking firearms, as well as possessing firearms in furtherance of drug trafficking crimes and drug trafficking. The Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office has brought state charges in several additional cases, and I want to thank that office for partnering with us in that effort. I do want to take a moment to highlight a few of the federal cases. In one case, law enforcement purchased more than 50 firearms from a group of 7 people who were working together to sell firearms on Cleveland streets, even though not one of them had a federal firearms license. Those included stolen firearms, firearms with obliterated serial numbers, switches, already loaded firearms, assault rifles, and firearms that had been previously used to commit violent crimes. Sometimes these individuals sold controlled substances at the same time they were selling firearms to the law enforcement team working on this matter. In 2 other cases, law enforcement purchased 33 firearms and 23 firearms respectively, including switches, from 2 other individuals who once again do not hold federal firearms licenses. Many of these sales took place in public, in parking lots of businesses, during business hours, or in recreational areas, while nearby, uninvolved, law-abiding citizens were engaging in their day-to-day errands and or engaging in recreational activities. In yet another case, That involved ATF identifying several individuals who were actively engaged in a conspiracy to conduct a home invasion and rob at gunpoint what they believed to be a stash house containing several kilograms of cocaine. Law enforcement intervened before these individuals could carry out their plan. Additionally, this investigation resulted in law enforcement buying or otherwise seizing cocaine, cocaine base, methamphetamine, fentanyl, heroin and fentanyl mixtures, as well as MDA pills, which are sometimes known as Molly or ecstasy. Not all of these cases are directly related to one another, but they all have three common threads. They all contributed to the violence and lawlessness that illegal gun trafficking and narcotics trafficking brings to our community. In all, the combination of crime data analysis and firearm analytics provided important information to move these investigations forward. And finally, all of these prosecutions were made possible by the hard work and professionalism of the many women and men who have dedicated their lives to the difficult job of law enforcement. I fully recognize that we simply cannot arrest our way out of our community's violent crime problems. Therefore, I have invited Mayor Bibb to highlight other efforts that the City of Cleveland is engaged in to interrupt and prevent violent crime in Cleveland's many neighborhoods, including those that were the focus of this initiative. But make no mistake, this law enforcement effort has disrupted ongoing criminal activity and removed several criminal actors driving violent crime from Cleveland streets. It has undoubtedly prevented or disrupted future violent crimes from playing out in our communities. And all of us here today seek to make tomorrow a safer day for all of our citizens. This was a significant step toward doing so. I'm going to turn the podium over to ATF Director Dettelbach. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's
Not
okay.
used to where I'm
You wanna
standing, you know?
dance.
It's really, really great to be here at, I'll just go off script, the best U.S. Attorney's Office in the United States. Certainly now improved.
Yeah.
And it's really, really an honor to be standing next to United States Attorney Becky Letzko in a room with so many incredible people from this office who continue to just do amazing work day and night, weekends, all the time to protect the people of Cleveland. So thank you. I also want to thank Mayor Bibb and Chief Drummond and the entire Cleveland Division of Police for the incredible partnership that we had together with you on this whole summer, this effort, and always to our incredible United States Marshal, Pete Elliott, whose deputies were invaluable in this process, apprehending the majority of the defendants, Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, Prosecutor O'Malley, and all of our state, local, and federal partners who worked on this, DEA, FBI, HSI, BCI, Adult Patrol Authority, CBP Air and Marine, Ohio State Police, Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office, OIU, really just an incredible group of people. And I also want to just take 1 second as a point of personal pride to recognize the men and women of ATF. Everybody in this office around the country who came to Cleveland this summer to help this NIBIN Enhanced Enforcement Initiative work. Our SAC, Daryl McCormick, our acting ASAC, John Swerglia, our RAC, Mike Jaszewski, and the entire team, many of whom are here, and many of whom continue to work on this because the numbers that the U.S. Attorney's Office gave you are the current numbers. This is an ongoing effort, of course. So this is extremely dangerous work. I think that's the first thing I want to say about law enforcement in this case. From agents, from the police officers here, but every single day, despite the dangers that they face, because these are very dangerous people we're talking about, without hesitation, they faced that danger here in Cleveland. They ran toward the gunfire in order to make sure that they could have an effect on violent crime in the city of Cleveland. These charges and arrests are the result of a tremendous team effort that has actually been going on behind the scenes, as it had to be, not just this summer, but even before the summer. It could not have happened without the people who are here today, and especially with the people in this great office. People who I've had the privilege of calling colleague today and before. And I want to start with Kelly Galvin. Your amazing work, again, on this initiative. And I remember when I was here, Your work on those initiatives just continues to actually be heroic for the people of the city of Cleveland. Rob Quartz, Margaret Sweeney, Carol Skutnick I see over there. I don't want to miss anybody, but the entire team here has just been absolutely tremendous. And as you heard from United States Attorney Letzko, nearly 60 people have been charged and arrested, all on firearms and or illicit narcotics offenses, and more than 240 crime guns has been seized. Now, she told you a little bit about how we work up the intelligence for this initiative, this NIBIN Enhanced Enforcement Initiative. And if I had to say it in plain English, it would be this is an initiative about following the gun. That's what we did here. Of the 240 crime guns seized here, 46 of them were linked to 102 shooting incidents, including 11 homicides. Just one of these crime guns was tied to 14 different shootings. Many of these defendants were also in possession of PMFs, or privately made firearms, what we call ghost guns. And many are in possession of what we call machine gun conversion devices, as she said, also known as switches or autoseers, that turn legal semi-automatic weapons into illegally fully automatic machine guns on the streets of Cleveland, facing the community, facing law enforcement. And many, of course, were also in the possession of illicit drugs, including fentanyl and heroin, responsible for many deaths in our community every year. Guns and drugs go together, unfortunately. They do now, and unfortunately, they will. It's no secret in many cities across America, and here in Cleveland, which is no exception, that there's a serious violent crime problem, a serious gun crime problem here. And much of that is fueled by a small number of people. And that's really the idea of what I'm going to describe to you, NIBIN, which is NIBIN works on the principle that although there may be a larger group of people doing crimes, the actual number of trigger pullers who are terrorizing a community is significantly smaller, and we need to focus on those individuals as best we can. We know that it is the case because of what you see here today, because of the work across the summer doing the intelligence before the summer started, and then going out there and doing the enforcement and finding that when you followed the guns, you would get to very, very violent individuals. So what we call that at ATF is crime gun intelligence. And basically that means squeezing every last bit of evidence that we can out of a crime gun, what comes out the front, the back, the inside, the outside of that crime gun, to identify these violent trigger pullers, the worst of the worst. The key to that is what we call our National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, or NIBIN. It effectively allows us to take a ballistic image from the ejected cartridge casing of a firearm, and really it's sort of a fingerprint of that crime gun. And to connect that crime gun to not just one shooting, because it can connect it to a shooting and solve a homicide, but also to other shootings that it may have been involved with in the area. Because there's something called a shooting cycle. And when you can identify the shooting cycle and you can interrupt the shooting cycle, as all of these men and women have done here with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Cleveland, you actually not only catch people for what they've done, but you prevent those people from shooting and killing again. It allows you to connect one shooting to another shooting that might have happened down the street a week before, a month before, or even across the state or in another state. That's what's happened here in Cleveland. And what you see here is the result of three things. It's investigators at ATF and all of these agencies using these advanced investigative techniques to identify these most violent individuals, prosecutors taking on those investigations and working the heck out of them to make sure that the people that we identify face justice when they're caught, and third, these incredible partnerships like we have with the city of Cleveland and the mayor and the police chief here and everybody here. And I want to end with two messages. First, to the good people of Cleveland, which is my home, even though I work all over now, we're not done. Not by a long shot. ATF and everybody here is going to continue to stand with you and to make sure that we protect and respect the rights of peaceful, law-abiding Clevelanders, their rights to live in peace and free from harm, without having to worry about a hail of gunfire when they're doing things that every person has a right to expect that they can do without fearing for their lives. Going to a park, going to a movie, going to church, going to a rock concert, just being out for the first nice day of summer. Their right is to make sure they can do those things. The effort here shows what can be accomplished in using the best partnership and crime gun intelligence to fight this problem. But we all know that there's a large problem out there, and we have a long way to go. That's why the second thing I want to say is that we are not done working here together to make sure this is not a one-time deal. We're working together to make sure that this kind of technology and intelligence can become a long-term, sustainable, and permanent force in fighting gun crime here. As we said several months ago, a huge part of that, even when this effort was not public, is that we're committed together to have a full-fledged crime gun intelligence center here in Cleveland, Ohio. The reason for that commitment should now be easy for people to understand. It means having cases like this, investigations like this, that are just the regular part of doing business. That's already going on to an extent, but we need to make sure that Cleveland is best in class in doing that in the entire nation. And I know I've met with the mayor several times about that, the chief several times about that. We are fully committed to making that happen. And next, the final message to the folks that are out there doing violent crime, make no mistake. You're out there, we're going to find you, we're going to catch you, and we're going to hold you accountable under the law. That's what we do in law enforcement. That's what these incredible people do every day. So thanks, and I'd like to turn the podium over to Mayor Bibb.
I think Pete's next, right?
No, go.
No? Okay. Sure, I'll follow protocol.
My thing said to turn.
Especially in front of law enforcement.
One thing to do.
Well, today's announcement about the heroic efforts of law enforcement really goes to show you the power of collaboration. State law enforcement, local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, all working together to keep our community safe. The success announced today is yet another display of that collaboration, of how government agencies coming together can get guns off our streets and arrest those that have been putting those guns into our neighborhoods. Now, as many have already attested, there is still a lot more work to do. But with nearly 250 guns removed from our streets, thousands of grams of illegal drugs seized, and almost 60 arrests made, Cleveland is safer today because of this critical and important operation. I want to thank U.S. Attorney Letzko, ATF Director Dettelbeck, U.S. Marshal Pete Elliott, Prosecutor O'Malley, and all of our local, state, and federal partners for their commitment and dedication each and every single day to make our city safe. And today's announcement is just a latest example of our efforts through our new initiative called RISE, Raising Investment in Safety for Everyone, recognizing that we can't do it alone at 601 Lakeside Avenue. And I know the chief can attest to this. We need every tool in our arsenal to keep Cleveland safe. Since we started RISE in July, we have already seen over 100 felony arrests, including numerous wanted for aggravated murder and other critical violent crimes, approximately 60 other illegal gun seizures, bringing the total to over 300 with today's announcement, dozens of stolen vehicles recovered, and additional helpful tips to make sure we can have critical intelligence related to pending investigations. Now, it's important to note that these collaborative efforts, all working together, is what our administration is all focused on, using a multi-pronged approach to solving and deterring violent crime in Cleveland. We want to encourage residents and businesses to join our Safe Smart CLE camera program. Since we announced the expansion of that program in July, registrations have already quadrupled to date. We've also have made historic investments in our police department. Last week, we announced new investments around recruitment of new officers to the Cleveland Division of Police, a new $5,000 signing bonus for new cadets, a 50% increase in academy pay going from $16 an hour to $24 an hour, and also a fast-track program for new college graduates and those with military experience to join the ranks of the Division of Police. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll have additional investments to announce around retention and deployment to let the men and women of our police department know we have their backs, and we're going to continue to invest in good quality, constitutionally appropriate policing in the city of Cleveland. Also, I want to mention that we are using the American Rescue Plan investments to really make a smart down payment in the future around violence prevention. We're partnering with the Cleveland Foundation through our $10 million Neighborhood Safety Endowment Fund to give the city of Cleveland over the next 10 to 15 years, real investments to invest in proven strategies that we know that can interrupt crime and deter crime in our neighborhoods. And so again, I want to thank all the partners for their support. We have a lot more work to do, but to the residents of Cleveland, you should feel a little bit safer today, because all of us on this stage are committed to making this one of the safest cities in the country, and we can't do it without your continued support.
Steve, is it all right if I talk?
I'll let you talk.
It always seems to be.
We'll push him up.
First, it's an honor to be here with our new U.S. Attorney, Becky, a privilege and an honor, and all the other leaders here today, especially my good friend, Steve Daddleback, who I've known for more than a few decades now. The U.S. Marshal Service was honored to collaborate and partner in this latest operation with ATF and all of our partners here in Cleveland to help reduce violent crime. The Marshal Service has had a long-standing relationship and partnership with the Cleveland Police Department and with ATF, and we personally know how significant their roles are in reducing violent crime, and we, the U.S. Marshal Service, are very proud to work alongside of them. Very proud. As a former ATF agent, I know firsthand how difficult and dangerous the job of an ATF agent is. And I just want to take a quick second, as I see many ATF agents in this room, to thank all those hardworking ATF agents, some coming from very far distances, who were on the ground in our city in this long-term investigation, putting together these very, very, very highly complex cases on very, very violent individuals. They worked long and they worked hard and sacrificed many hours away from their families. And I want to personally thank each of them and every one of them for their dedication and their commitment to making our streets of Northern Ohio safer. We look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you. What do you want me, Steve?
All right, we have just a few moments for questions. Do you have any questions?
This might be for Steve or the mayor. What's the status on the Crime Gun Intelligence Center?
Sure. We'll eventually have like an opening, right, of it. The things that were going on that happened in Crime Gun Intelligence Center were what was happening this summer. And the mayor and I have had now 2 or 3 different meetings with the chief and with ASAC Smerglia and Daryl McCormick, who runs things in Ohio, as to how we're going to formalize this. So I would describe it honestly, it's going to be sort of a soft opening, right? So we're already doing a lot of the things we need to do. We probably will get to a point, though, where we have a separate standalone squad of people who only work on this. And I think that's the point where we're talking about probably, honestly, for that to happen. I don't want to set a date because I want to try to always push it sooner. And if I say a date, that'll. But I would say that that's sort of in the months kind of thing. But we're already sort of doing the things we needed to do on crime gun intelligence. It's just making the commitment to make sure that we have a standalone space and a team of people who are devoted to that, so that we know that it doesn't ever sort of flag, right? It always stays.
And I would say this, when I took office, Steve and I had some very important and frank conversations about what are some new tools and investments we can make as a city to really deter and get more illegal crime guns off our streets. And as the announcement we announced today shows, you had 1 gun linked to 14 shootings. And without that NIBIN technology, we wouldn't be able to do the good police work we did over the last year. And so it's so important that we beef up and formalize these efforts in Cleveland so we can get more illegal crime guns off our streets and really deploy good data, good intelligence to make sure we're solving violent crimes as quickly as possible in Cleveland.
What areas of Cleveland were the focus of this initiative?
Chief?
Chief,
Hey, Tracy, how are you? Good. We have targeted areas.
And with the ATF, we targeted just about all the areas within the city that were experiencing violent crimes, but mostly in the southeast section of our city is where this particular operation was taking place.
When did it start and how many people were involved?
It's ongoing. It's been going on for a little while now. I can't give you exact dates, Tracy, but it's ongoing. It's still ongoing as we speak today.
Because I think that the hard where we actually were doing operations was June 1st. There was a bunch of people who were working on the intel part of it before that, but I would describe June 1st as the stand-up op state. And then she's right. There's still some loose ends to tie up and things that have to be done even in the next weeks. But we're sort of at a critical mass where we can talk about it.
So a couple of months before that, you started with the intel?
Yeah, the intel, I remember, I don't know the exact date, but the agents who worked on this, some of whom are here and don't want to be anywhere near a camera, they started working the intel and the analysts. We have analysts who work on this, crime and intelligence analysts, and I think that I was beginning to hear about that in the spring, even end of winter. It takes a while to work up the data so that we did this before when I was U.S. Attorney. Honestly, every time this happens, it's better than the time before, and the U.S. Attorney's Office pushes for it to be better and better and better, more targeted, and it's just incredible to see, like, what you have accomplished here in this office. I couldn't accomplish this, and what ATF accomplished, certainly my predecessors couldn't. It's really pretty impressive, the targeting that happens now.
My question's for Mayor Bibb.
Yeah.
The murder rate is up 13% this year in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Why does the homicide unit remain understaffed, and what would you tell all of the mothers for justice?
We share their frustration. We share their pain. I talk often to many other families that have been affected by gun violence in our city. But today's announcement shows you the work this administration is doing to keep our city as safe as possible. Despite the fact that we are down staffing nearly 20% in our division, as I said last week when we announced the new investments around recruitment for new officers, we are in a national war for talent. But despite the fact that we are down in our homicide unit, we have a nearly 80% solve rate. That's higher than the national average. And the reason why that solve rate is so high is because we're using good intelligence and good technology like the NIBIN tool. And so we have a lot more work to do. As I said last week, we are going to have continued conversations with police union leadership to address our retention issues inside the Division of Police. But again, we are committed to not sparing any expense to keep our city safe, and today's announcement is a good progress around that important note.
Can you talk a little bit more about how the manpower was used, undercover, what kind of things you were doing, obviously without releasing too much information?
Yeah, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. So look, so there's a variety of different law enforcement tactics that get used in general. Maybe that's the best way to answer that question. First is we use good old-fashioned evidentiary investigation after the fact to try to catch people who shoot people and kill people and bring them to justice. Right. Second is you try to then, figure out whether there's broader investigative steps that need to be taken to tie together various different incidents. It might look like separate incidents, and this is one thing the NIBIN tool does and the crime gun intelligence and tracing does. It's tying together different things that might seem disparate into one case, right? There might be things that look like they're separate cases, and then you look at the evidence and you realize, well, wait, there's a conspiracy here. There's a group here. The third thing, though, you refer to as more proactive investigative steps, and that comes in different forms as well, either undercover work or electronic surveillance work, using sophisticated electronic means to surveil people with court approval sometimes, right? That's required. All of those things are on the table in an effort like this. And that's why it's so important to have the U.S. Attorney's Office and the police and the marshals and the FBI and the state police, all of these people here together, working under the same group with the prosecutors to try and make those things happen in appropriate cases in a very quick turnaround. And that's sort of what you see here.
Okay, thank you very much.
I got
One more question.
Becky, the Senate Judiciary Committee has Thursday for your nomination. Just wanted to see if you wanted to say anything about that.
No. Other than, I would say I'm just thrilled to be going through the process, and I'm looking forward to it, no matter how long it takes. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Scott, thanks.
Talking about some partners. Good job, man. Good stuff. I should have absolutely.
Right up that alley. Yes, sir. Gotta go.
We're back on the same wavelength.
I think we are.